Canada just pulled the trigger on a nearly $70 billion industrial war chest, the biggest since World War II. Why? Because Washington slapped a 35% tariff on Canadian goods. Not over steel. Not over a trade deficit. But because Ottawa recognized Palestine as an independent state. One diplomatic move. Tens of thousands of American jobs now hanging by a thread. In May 2025, Prime Minister Mark Carney made the announcement. It wasn't shocking, Europe had already done it. But for the US, which strongly backs Israel, it was a red line. Within hours, Trump hit back. A 35% tariff on everything from Canada. No warning. No talks. No economic logic. Just one line to the press. We don't fund those who betray us. 2 weeks later, Canada answered, not with words, but with cash. $70 billion for what Carney calls sovereign industrial rebuilding, the plan. Fire up more than 20 shuttered steel plants in Ontario and Quebec, and ship the product to Europe instead of Detroit. Think of it as an industrial buffer, close enough to see America, far enough not to need it. Then came the energy pivot, wind farms in Alberta, solar in British Columbia, giant battery systems, backed by Europe and Japan. Ottawa's offering zero-interest credit lines for companies leaving the US market, but only if they sell at home or to partners like India, Japan, or Europe. Analysts are calling it the biggest strategic reset since the 1973 oil crisis. Except this time, Canada's chasing control, not crude. Already, 70,000 to 80,000 US jobs are in danger, from Wisconsin factories to Iowa farms. Canada's counterpunch. Surgical tariffs on soybeans, beef, and dairy. Shipments stuck at ports or turned away. In Green Bay, a precision machinery company shut down after losing access to Ontario steel. 600 workers sent home. North of the border, Ontario's mills are roaring back. Auto plants in Niagara Falls are hiring. The Canadian dollar's climbing. This isn't just an economic shift. It's Canada walking away from a 30-year North American trade system. The US thought tariffs would boost domestic production. Instead, the gap left by Canada got filled by China and Mexico. GM and Ford tried to renegotiate with Canadian suppliers. Carney flat out refused unless the tariffs were gone. China swooped in with steel, electronics, and machinery, taking Canada's old market share. US firms, crushed by higher costs, outsourced instead of investing at home, a slow bleed of manufacturing capacity. Canada didn't rant or posture. They rebuilt steel, autos, renewables, with new trade lanes to Europe, India, and Asia. The message? We don't just survive without you, we thrive. Meanwhile, China dealt Washington another blow, slapping tariffs on US crude oil and LNG in early 2025. Overnight, US oil exports to China collapsed from over 140,000 barrels a day to almost zero. Ports in Texas built to serve China sat idle. Beijing quietly replaced US oil with Russian, Saudi, and UAE barrels, paid for in yuan, not dollars. Imports from the US plunged 70%. China stopped taking American shipments entirely, expanding domestic storage and Russian pipeline gas instead. Then came the shocker. In April 2025, Canada sent more oil to China than to the US for the first time ever. The Trans Mountain Pipeline let Canada bypass US ports entirely. No fees, no politics, no leverage for Washington. Mexico's joining in, building direct routes with Canada that skip US territory. Goods from Asia can now cross North America without touching US soil. The economic hit? Up to $120 billion a year, and America's influence in its own backyard shrinking fast. Foreign investment is following the shift. Mexico just set a record for manufacturing FDI. Canada had its best year in a decade. Factories that once went to Houston or Detroit are now choosing Vancouver or Monterrey. The more Washington leans on tariffs and protectionism, the more Canada and Mexico pull ahead, with global players lining up to join them. And if that wasn't enough, America's last big energy deal with China, the so-called Phase 1 agreement, was doomed from the start. The US simply didn't have the infrastructure to deliver what it promised. Ing tankers had to be built abroad. Export terminals maxed out. By the end, China had moved on, locking in long-term supply from Russia and the Middle East, and paying in yuan. Now, Texas oil ports built for China's demands stand rusting, while Washington argues over blame. The real question isn't whether Canada can survive without the US, it's how many other countries will follow their lead. Because once America's closest allies find they can live without its markets, that leverage is gone, and it may never come back. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure you subscribe to the Untold Compass, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video so more people see what's really going on.